So today we're looking beyond Isaiah's prophetic woes of Judah that we studied in the first 39 chapters of Isaiah, and looking beyond the immediate years full of awful trouble and judgment that was to fall upon his nation and the rebellious people, and then beyond the days of trouble and the hours of waste and captivity in Babylon. We find there came Isaiah's prophetic words of hope and help and comfort from God. We will see in chapter 40 that Isaiah is writing to a generation of people who were not yet born and who would live at least 100+ years after the time of his writing. So Isaiah writes anticipating that the people will be in Babylon captivity. And while they were there, he attempts to focus them upon the hope that they have as God's people and his promises to them. And in his way of speaking the message of the Lord, he likens the people to pilgrims on a troubled journey, where the Lord helps and guides and keeps and directs even the little ones of the flock, even those that are weak and helpless. And just like the people of Judah, he speaks to us in comfort and care and consolation on our pilgrimage today. In this pilgrimage of life, this world is without purpose and without meaning and without direction, and the earth is nothing but a vast, immeasurable graveyard. Or else this world is our Father's house, and he keeps watch beyond the valley of the shadow of death, loving and caring for his own. And there's no middle ground. Verse 1 of chapter 40. Comfort, comfort my people, says your God. So Isaiah is instructed with an intense command by God to write words of encouragement, determined for his people after the events of 586 BC, at least 100+ years after the time of his writing. Isaiah knew and had already prophesied that Judea would be taken captive to Babylon. And as we studied in a previous lesson, God had told the people they could know a true prophet if his prophecies came true. And he gave his prophets some near-term prophecies to come true so the people could believe those prophecies that had not yet happened. And today we can look back and see the many prophecies of Isaiah that have occurred and believe those still yet to come are real. Verse 2, speak tenderly to Jerusalem. Now Jerusalem here is a personification of God's people. And cry to her that her warfare is ended, that her iniquity is pardoned, that she has received from the Lord's hand double for all of her sins. The people had already suffered the consequences of their sin. They'd been disciplined severely by the Lord because of their rebellion against the covenant that they had made with him. And now is the time for healing and restoration to begin, and it would come with double blessing. Verse 3, a voice cries in the wilderness, in this barren wasteland of Babylon, prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. The King is coming. In Isaiah's day, when a king would be brought into a land, he would be carried upon his throne by his minions, and it was very important that the road on which the king would be carried be as level and as straight as possible. If you have ever been on the old San Antonio Road in Texas, it was originally called El Camino Real, or the King's Highway, put there in case the Spanish king ever came to visit. In this verse we see the foretelling of the cry of John the Baptist, the cry in the wilderness, prepare the way for the coming king and his kingdom. Verse 4, every valley shall be lifted up. The valleys of sinful actions and habits must be repented of and brought to the level ground of the righteousness of God. And every mountain and every hill be made low, so the lofty mountains of pride and self-exaltation must be repented of and removed to be brought to the level of ground of the righteousness of God. The uneven ground shall become level, and the rough places a plain. So we must walk consistently in fellowship with the Lord, not deviating to our own plan. And we must love the Lord our God with all our heart and love our neighbors as ourselves. Isaiah then promises that when the people have leveled the ground and made the way straight for the Lord to come, that it would be then that they would see the glory of the Lord, for he would come to them and restore them to himself. Verse 5, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Even though Psalms 19 says that every day the heavens are telling the glory of God, nevertheless, there is coming a time when the glory of the Lord will be revealed in a way that has never been revealed before. It will be revealed, Isaiah says, in such a way that all flesh will see it, and they will all see it together. There will not be a person here and a person there saying, I've seen the Lord, I've seen the Lord. No more solitary Moses on Mount Sinai, no more solitary Ezekiel with his visions, no more solitary Paul with his ecstasies in the third heaven, but every single human solitary being together will see the glory of the Lord. Verse 6, a voice says to Isaiah, cry. And I said, what shall I cry? And God says, only I can deliver you, and I will. You cannot deliver yourself. And that's still the cry today. John 14:6 says, Jesus answered, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So only Jesus can deliver you. All flesh is grass, and all its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers and the flower fades when the breath of the Lord blows on it. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God will stand forever. Do you want to build your life on something that lasts? As time passes, we learn that the earth is not flat. We learned that there's more than 1,100 stars in the sky. We learned that Dr. Spock is not the authority on child rearing, and that Darwin's origin of the species was just an unfounded theory. We're now learning that happiness doesn't come from wealth and fame and prestige and power and education and relationships and alcohol and drugs. So what is the fad of the day that the world believes and depends on? The Bible says God's word outlives all of the fads, and its message has never changed and never will change. In the beginning, God, it says he's real. He depends on nothing. He is personal. I am what you need me to be. Sin, all have sinned. All have fallen short of what God intended for us to be. Christ, he is God. He came to earth to show us how God intended for us to live. He died in our place as a sacrifice for our sin to save us from the wrath of God. He rose from the dead to guide us each day, and he conquered the grave. Faith. How can I escape the broken world's effect on me? The empty feeling, the lack of purpose, the guilt of sin. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whosoever believes in him, that is, trust in him, should not perish, but have everlasting life. John 3:16. Verse 9, go up to a high mountain, O Zion, herald of good news. Lift up your voice with strength, O Jerusalem, herald of good news. Lift it up, fear not. Say to the cities of Judah, behold your God. So the people of Judah are called by the Lord to be evangelists in these verses. They're called to proclaim the gospel. And he says God's blessing isn't just for the people of Israel, it's for the whole world. Now the following verses are messianic regarding their description as they speak at once of all the aspects of what the Messiah will do when he comes. Verse 10, behold, the Lord God comes with might. We've already seen in Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 and 7, that it was prophesied that when the Messiah would come, he would come in his might. For a child will be born to us, a son will be given to us, and the government will rest on his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. There will be no end to the increase of his government of peace. On the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and righteousness from then on and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will accomplish this. And then it says, and his arm rules for him. So the Lord is coming to exercise his strong rule over his people with his arms of judgment and compassion. In Revelation chapter 2, verse 27, which is a quote of Psalms chapter 2, verse 9, it says, and he shall rule them with the rod of iron. And then it says, behold, his reward is with him, and his recompense before him. So the Lord is coming to recompense or reward people, which is indicative of Christ coming to act as judge over mankind. In Revelation chapter 22, verses 12 and 13, we read that Jesus tells us that when he comes again to the earth, that he will render judgment to every man according to his deeds. Behold, I am coming quickly, and my reward is with me, to render to every man according to what he has done. I am the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. And Jesus says he's coming again, and when he comes again, he will rule like David, the shepherd king. Verse 11, he will tend his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs in his arms. He will carry them in his bosom and gently lead those that are with young. Jesus says in John chapter 10, verse 11, I am the good shepherd, and the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Now, the preceding verses that we've just studied answered the question the people of Isaiah's day had about God's desire to deliver them. And God's message to them was, I desire to deliver you. I plan to deliver you. I will deliver you, and I will treat you tenderly and with love. Now he will answer their question about God's ability to deliver them. God, can you really do it if you want to? Verse 12 through the end of the chapter, Isaiah seeks to encourage the Judeans by having them consider just how great and mighty their God really is. Have you ever asked yourself, how great must God really be? Do we believe what we sing? How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God, and all will see how great is our God. This is what Isaiah writes and asks the Judeans in captivity in Babylon in this chapter. How great is the God you serve? In verses 12 through 17, Isaiah asks, is your God the one that created the heavens and the earth? Verse 12, who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand? And who has marked off the heavens with a span? Who enclosed the dust of the earth in a measure? And who weighed the mountains in a scale and the hills in a balance? Do you know the God who created the universe from nothing? Is your God the true God that is omnipotent, able to do anything, whose greatness and might is infinite? And then in verse 13, who has measured the Spirit of the Lord? That is, who knows what's in God's mind? Or what man showed him his counsel? Whom did God consult, and who made him to understand? Who taught God the path of justice, and taught him knowledge, and showed him the way of understanding? Do you know the God who is the originator of knowledge and justice? Is your God the true God of all truth and righteousness? Verse 15, behold, that is, see this truth, that to the God who created the universe, the things of earth are so small. The nations are like a drop in the bucket. We still use that phrase, a drop in the bucket today, and are counted as the dust on the scales. Can you see that? The dust on the scales are so small that they don't affect the weighing. Behold, he takes up the coastlands like fine dust. The trees of Lebanon would not suffice for fuel. They wouldn't start a good fire for God. Nor are its beasts enough for a burnt offering, hardly enough for a sacrifice worthy of him. Verse 17, all the nations are as nothing before him. They are accounted by him as less than nothing and emptiness. So the only conclusion possible from that is that God is sovereign. And in verses 18 to 20, Isaiah asks, is your God the one that is beyond compare to the gods and idols of the other nations? Verse 18, to whom then will you liken God? Or what likeness compares to him? An idol, a craftsman cast it, a goldsmith overlays it with gold and cast for its silver chains. If a man is too impoverished for an offering, he chooses valuable wood that will not rot for his idol, and he seeks out a skilled craftsman to set up an idol that will not move, that will not fall over. Isaiah tells us that the idol maker makes sure to use a quality craftsman to prepare the idol in such a way that it doesn't totter and fall over, since it would be such embarrassment if your God falls over and you can't set it up right. We read in 1 Samuel chapter 5 that that's what happened to the Philistines when they stole the Ark of the Covenant and put it next to their god Dagon, and it kept toppling over. It kept toppling over before the true God. The only conclusion is that it's ridiculous to practice idolatry when you compare your idol to the holy living God. are other man-made idols. The two dominant idols of today are secularism, that man is the measure of all things, and superstition, the worship of other spiritualities, witches. In verse 21 through 26, Isaiah asks, "Is your God the one that rules creation and world affairs? Does your God remove nations? And does your God know how many stars there are? And does he know the names of every one of them?" Verse 21, "Do you not know? Do you not hear? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth?" According to this verse, there are two reasons why men who practice idolatry are without excuse. One, on one hand, the very foundation of the earth is a testimony that God is the creator. On the other hand, from the beginning, the truth has been taught by word of mouth, so that those who have not been willing to hear it are without excuse. And if you recall in our study of Romans chapter 1, we heard that in the New Testament. Verse 22, "It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers. It is he who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to dwell in. It is he who brings princes down to nothing and makes rulers of the earth as emptiness. Scarcely are they, the rulers of nations, planted. Scarcely are they sown. Scarcely have their stems taken root in the earth when he blows on them and they wither, and the tempest carries them off like stubble." God is not only superior, it says, but he's sovereign. Verse 25, "To whom then will you compare me that I should be like him, says the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high and see who created the stars." So when you look up at the sky at night, he says, don't just see the stars, but see the one who created the stars. He who brings out their host by number, calling them all by name, by the greatness of his might, and because he is strong in power, not one of them is missing. Does your God know everything? And in verses 27 to 31, Isaiah asks, "Is your God the God that you pray to for renewed strength, so that you never grow weary or lose heart? Is your God dependable?" Verse 27, "Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is disregarded by my God?" So Isaiah foresees prophetically that the captive Judeans would be saying, well, if there's a God, how can he do this to us? If there's a God, has he forgotten us and no longer cares about us? Is he really there? So they question God's nature. That is, perhaps he can't see them. And they question his relationship with them. Why wouldn't he defend them? And so they begin to have no hope. However, he seeks to encourage them in the fact that God is not too great to care. In fact, he's too great not to care. Verse 28, "Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He doesn't faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable." The Lord has inexhaustible power source. He's doing all of the many things that he does, and it's never a burden to him. Not only does God possess all these qualities, he shares his strength and his knowledge with all who need it. Verse 29, he gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases his strength. Even youth shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. In the circumstance of this world, they may overcome even the strongest young people in their prime. But verse 31, but they who wait on the Lord, they that are completely dependent on God, they that are willing to let him decide the terms, they that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. They who wait on the Lord will be able to overcome natural drawbacks, endure with energy to spare, and keep on living without becoming excessively tired. David closes the 27th Psalm with, wait upon the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, upon the Lord. They that wait upon the Lord shall have strength and encouragement for the journey. The Lord shall make every valley exalted, and every mountain low, and every crooked place straight, and the rough places plain. And for those who are pilgrims in this land, who wait upon him, God directs the way through the wilderness. In Exodus 13:21, and the Lord shall be a pillar of fire by night, and a pillar of cloud by day, as he directs those who wait upon him. The Lord with his right hand shall be a sword to fight for them, and the Lord with his left hand will be a shield to protect them. Behold, the Lord comes with a strong hand, and his arm shall rule for him. Isaiah 40, verse 10. And in Philippians chapter 4, verse 13, the Apostle Paul wrote about how he could do all things that God wanted him to do in serving the Lord through Christ who strengthened him. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. And that is the lesson for today.